Hi everybody, this is my second video to close out my original 2017 near-death experience. So in the first video, I had shared the honest last leg of my journey. And I had explained I had feared judgment, and that's why I'd left that last part out, because it was probably for most people the least comfortable to hear. and this one is a little bit different, because this is a realization I had about that experience that came to me in meditation probably about a year and a half later. So I wanted to kind of add this to this collection because it's so important. And it was shocking to learn. And anytime I feel shocked by, the wisdom that I'm able to channel, I know that will definitely have resonance with others. And so that's exactly what happened. In that 2017 near-death experience, there was that middle part of the journey where I talked about Jesus, and he appeared and he said, "Do you want to get better?" And I grabbed both his hands, and we were flying through these beautiful, beautiful shades of green. And the way I described it, because I woke up the next morning and, my cane was right by my bed and my walker was downstairs. When I came to the next morning, Jesus and I were flying. I was in my astral body. We were holding astral hands, whatever that means. But that's what it felt like, that I grabbed his hand. And when he said, "Do you want to get better?" I grabbed his hand, and we were just zooming through this healing green, these beautiful shades of green. And I was shouting over and over, "I'm going to get better as fast as I can. I'm going to get better as fast as I can." And when I came to in the morning, I knew I wasn't going to need that cane. But the way I described it at the time was a lot more disempowering than what actually happened. So if you go back to my original video, I described it as I was healed by Jesus. And I think, as I said, with every passing month, even as I channel and I get to know different beings and I get to know myself better, the information I can pull through seems to elevate or clarify, might be a better word. And so at the time I thought, oh, well, it must have been Jesus. I mean, how else would I have healed? And by the way, that wasn't a once and done. I actually, like I had just said in that last video, I got extraordinarily sick again. And I'm going to do another series because I had another handful of similar experiences over the last year and a half. And learned so much about myself. I'm like, okay, I'm done learning. But so at the time, I thought that Jesus had asked me, "Do you want to get well?" And I was like, yes. And I assumed in that little girl kind of way, well, Jesus healed me. And I don't know. I know a lot of you guys may know me from my group in Facebook called Divining Women. And if you do, you've probably heard me talk about how each of us is kind of like a spiritual burrito. I'm not just Susan Dyer. Susan Dyer in the here and now is the very small tip of a massive spiritual glacier. Like a spiritual DNA family tree that just expands until we get to that one, until we get to that source, right? And I had thought, oh, well, Jesus just came because that's a Jesus type thing to do. But as I've gotten, again, to know myself, like I had really just started channeling back then, and I really didn't even know my higher self that well. And for anybody who is new at channeling, my greatest piece of advice for you is to begin with your own higher self. There is no more informative or transformative information or relationship that can be had than the one you have with your eternal self, you know? And so there is a part of my being that resonates with the being who is known as Mary Magdalene. And I remember being so shocked, but it's really important to share, because it actually, what I realized when I was channeling Jesus like a year and a half after this, it was shocking, but at the same time it wasn't, because it completely aligns with my conviction that is each one of us is that energy known as God. There is no separation. That is the most, I guess, controversial truth that I experienced while I was merged with that energy, was the realization that there was absolutely no separation between myself and that energy, that we are all made of what we come from. And so to have gotten to know myself more and some of my other lives and some of my fractals or higher selves or some of the essences of these beings, my relationship with Jesus became much deeper. And instead of assuming, oh, he was there because Jesus is, kind of a religious lifesaver, he'll just show up for anybody, I'd actually really deepened my relationship with him and came to understand that we've had a forever friendship. And in this channeling I did, and this is what I want to share with you guys, and amend that original perception that I had. I'll never forget it. It was so shocking, but in this channeling, and I have it recorded, he said, Susan, don't you see? He said, I was just along for the ride. That's all. I did nothing. I was just there for you as your BFF. I was just along for the ride, for your support. I flew beside you as you healed yourself. And while I was channeling this, I was like, I just felt like there's no way. Like, I did that? First of all, I was like, well, why can't I do it again? Because I had gotten sick again. But I think that was a really good first step in getting my mindset, beginning to understand the true power each one of us does have within, being made of that energy known as God. But to just look back and see that portion of my near-death experience from 2017, to see it that way, where this is my oldest and dearest companion who showed up immediately and did nothing more than, as he put it, prompt me. And that's how he put it. He said, he asked me, he's like, think back to it. What did I do? Nothing more than ask you a question. I did nothing more than ask, do you want to get better? And you were the one to rocket launch from there. And as he's saying this, I'm thinking back and I'm like, wow, yes, that's accurate. He asked me a question, that's it. And then I spazzed out, and then I grabbed his hand, and then I did the rest of it. And he really was, in that beautiful companion type way, just along for the ride, just there for support. Of course, none of my guides would want me to be feeling alone as I did that. And I do believe in that moment I needed to be reminded, and that is what he did for me. He reminded me. Hey, didn't you want to heal? By asking me that question. And he kind of explained it a little bit further, because then I began obsessively asking him questions, because my health had started to decline again. And, over the past year and a half, it's, I've almost died 2 more times. Most recently this February. So I wanted to understand, how was that possible? And especially as I began to get ill again, how was that possible? How did I do that overnight? How did I heal everything, even if it wasn't permanently? And actually, I was really angry, but I'm going to go into that in the next couple of videos. But I was like, how's that possible? Meaning, why isn't it possible like that? If we are all made of what we come from, I know this to be true. I viscerally experienced it. So why can't I affect another healing transformation? And this was helpful, I think, for all of us, especially those of us who are frustrated with what we think is slow progress. I want to share this with you because it's really important. He clarified it, and it made perfect sense. And he said, you had to create those conditions. That near-death experience of mine was absolutely mind-blowing. It was. It was mind-blowing. You could make a beautiful, fantastic movie about it. It was, truly, it was it sounds like a movie. It sounds like the best fantasy novel ever. And he said, you needed that. You needed to clear the stage of all the earthly clamor. It needed to be that drastic of a different setting for you to be able to remember and access your divinity. Like when I'm down here and I'm living on earth and everything here feels so real and is so dense, the notion of my transforming my health overnight like magic, seems impossible. And that's why I had to create that entire situation to where I was far enough removed. I was in this astral state. I was not steeped in 3D. I was far enough separate. I created circumstances that were, I guess you could say, magical enough where I could, in an instant, remember my truth and do something that would otherwise seem like a miracle. It would seem like a miracle to one of us down here, sitting here, to any one of us struggling with chronic health. Like, well, trust me, because I had spent the last year and a half screaming and swearing at anyone who would listen. God, my guides, everyone. Like, as if it was their fault or they were blocking me from doing the same thing. But it really did. It confused me terribly. But that is why I was able to do that. I needed to clear the stage and get up and out of all of this third dimensional clamor well enough to be like, okay, this is like a movie. This is magical. Anything can happen here. I'm not Susan, who lives outside of DC, who's stuck in a broke down body. I felt like a zooming, spastic, happy angel zooming around. And it was separate and different enough from my daily human circumstances to where I could immediately access from within what I needed to instantly or overnight transform my health. But again, for anyone who is down on themselves for, well, why is my progress so slow? Or I believe that too and I'm not healing. That's why I want to do a next series of videos, because after all of this, I thought, well, now's the time. I mean, literally, I even went to a book conference. I had written half the book. I was like, now's the time that you write this and it's a book and it's so beautiful. And you keep your cane and your walker and you look at it from time to time and laugh and you're like, those are the days. I thought that's what was supposed to happen, right? No, didn't happen. Actually, I had to go through what would be another year and a half of battling still to be here and not dying. So, for anyone who is thinking they are slow to heal and maybe down on themselves, I promise you, you are not as slow as you think you are. My guides actually told me, because my latest spiritual experience was far more meaningful and important than even this spectacular near-death experience. And I'll talk about it later, but basically my last experience, in my last spiritual experience, I was returned to self-love. And I'll go into it again in another couple of videos, but I'd asked my guides, I was like, I'm 43. Like, I felt like I must be the slowest study or the most stubborn, and my guides were really clear with me. They were like, Susan, we are elated. You made it. You're just in time. And they actually showed me an image of Ram Dass, who had at some point suffered a stroke and was in a wheelchair. And I don't know if he had difficulty talking, but the image I saw, it just seemed like he did. It just seemed like he couldn't really move and that he'd had a stroke, And I was I had this moment of embarrassment, like 43, and I've just accepted the grace of self-love, and my guides were like, Susan, you could have come to us in a wheelchair. You are not slow. You are just in time. And Wayne Dyer actually had come in, and he likes to say this a lot, and I like to be reminded of it too, so I love it. But he was like, don't forget, it is impossible to ever be unsynced from divine timing. It's simply not possible. So I just want to put that out there to anyone who's struggling, whether it be with health or love or finances or whatever it is, whatever your struggle is. I can tell you, I understand what it's like to struggle for decades with the same struggles. I don't know. I understand though. And the image my guides always give me is that when I get into fear and I get into basically a fearful obsession, it's almost like a human that is trapped in a crumpled car. That obsession kind of tells the universe, hands off, I've got this. This is mine. Until we finally surrender and they have to bust out like the jaws of life to cut us out, That's kind of the image that God had given me actually to kind of explain like my level of fear and worry about being sick was actually ensuring I stayed that way. Which is ironic because I'm like, but I'm human. How can you not be afraid? Whatever. Again, that's another video. But I hope this helps, and I hope that this gives hope to anybody who is struggling and has been struggling maybe with the same thing. I have struggled with the same things for decades. And just like Wayne always says, it is impossible to ever be out of sync with divine timing, just as it's impossible to ever be disconnected from our eternal selves, because we are one, even when it doesn't feel like it, which that's the bummer of Earth, because when it doesn't feel like it, it feels really true, but it's not. So I love you guys so much. And these 2 videos are my way of closing out my 2017 near-death experience. And I'm going to start making some more videos about these more recent experiences, which are like less rhinestones and glitz, but actually have been far more profound, which is kind of crazy, right? They're like perhaps less dramatic, but they've been more revolutionary than I could ever even imagine. So thank you guys as always. Please do subscribe if you like this. And if you are a woman, I'd love to see you on Facebook, Divining Women, or on Patreon. Take care. I love you all, and thank you so much.